This video covers pre-calc notes 1.1. The first topic we're going to talk about is dealing with quadrants and remembering how we label quadrants. So the way that I label quadrants is I start here and I go counterclockwise around. So that would be 1, that would be quadrant 2, this would be quadrant 3, and then finally the last one would be quadrant 4. So if I want to know which one of these quadrants would give me the following equations, negative x is greater than 0 and y is less than 0. Let's do the easy one first. Let's do the y is less than 0. So if y is less than 0, I know that that is occurring where the y values are negative. So that'd be here. So it could be quadrants 3 or quadrant 4. If I'm thinking about negative x being greater than 0, I would want to get rid of the negative by dividing by 1. And remember, when we do that, we have to flip the inequality sign around. So when x is less than 0 also. So when x is less than 0, that means when x is negative as well, and that would be these values over here. So that'd be quadrants 2 and 3. So we can see then that it would be quadrant 3 is where x and y, both values, are less than 0. Next concept we're going to cover is the distance formula. So the distance formula is when you take two x values and subtract them, square that quantity. Take the two y values, subtract them, square that quantity, and then you take the square root of their sum. So if I asked you to find the distance between these 2 points, what you're going to do, label that one x1 and y1, and label this one x2 and y2. You're just going to subtract them. So negative 7 minus 2. Now I know that the formula says x2 minus x1, but I chose to write it the other way, x1 minus x2. That doesn't matter. As long as you're taking the two x values and subtracting them, and take the two y values and subtracting them, you're going to get the same answer. So we'll subtract the x's and square it. Add to that the y values being subtracted, and square that, and then we take the square root of that. Don't try to type this on your calculator at once. I would recommend that you get answers to both of these first, and then you can put the square root in afterwards. So now this is going to be negative 9 squared, which is 81. And this side is going to give me negative 12 squared, which is going to be 144. And altogether I'm going to get the square root of 225, which is going to be 15. So I find that the distance between these 2 points would be 15. A couple things to keep in mind. When you're dealing with this, remember that you're dealing with a distance, so you're not going to have a negative number. Also, when you square these two numbers here, you should get positive numbers for these. It doesn't matter if they're both negative or if they're both positive. When we square any number, whether it's positive or negative, we should get positive numbers here. So make sure that you type it into your calculator correctly if you are using your calculator. Okay, next concept in this section of notes is the midpoint formula. So we're going to use the same two coordinate points that we used in the previous example, but now we're going to find the point that is halfway between the two, so the midpoint. And the way we do this is we add up the x's now and divide by 2. And we add up. So again, we add up the y's and we divide by. So then end up giving me negative 5 over 2, and this would end up being 4 over 2. Reduce when you can. End up with negative 5, comma, or negative 5 halves, comma 2. So we can use the concept of the midpoint formula to help us with a story problem. If it asks you to find the average sales or estimate the sales for the year 2002, and you know the sales in 2001 and 2003, all you have to do is add these up and divide by 2 to find the midpoint between them. So if I do 1,000 or 1,897,000 plus 2,800,000, and I divide that by 2, I end up getting 4,787,000 divided by 2, which would give me $2,393,500. So as I look at this, I'm going to look to see, did my answer that I came up with, did it fall in the middle of these two? Yeah. So I noticed that my sales were increasing, so in 2000 I should have a number that is in between the sales for 2001 and 2003. Okay, our next example says that the diameter of a cylinder propane gas tank is 4 feet, and the volume of that tank is 603.2 cubic feet, and I want to find the length. So here's what I know. I'm given some information about volume of a cylinder. So I'm going to ask that you look at page 7 and refer back to this when you're working on your bookwork to find the formulas for volume, area, perimeter of certain shapes. So looking at page 7, I can find that the volume of a cylinder is equal to pi r squared times h. And so in this problem, let's take a look at what we know. It says that the diameter is equal to 4. It says that the volume is equal to 603.2, and I want to find the length of the tank. Well, the length is the same as the height, so it's really going to be find the height or the length of the tank. So in my problem, let's plug in what we know. 603.2 equals pi. If the diameter is equal to 4, I know that the radius has to be 2. So I'm going to times this by 2 squared, and the height is what I'm trying to find. So 603.2 would be the same as 4 pi h. Let's divide by 4 pi, and make sure when I do this in my calculator that I put the 4 pi in parentheses so that it takes 603.2 and divides it by 4 pi, not just by 4 and then timesing it by pi. So I invite you to put that in your calculator with me, and you're going to find then that your height is about 48 feet. If you got an answer of 473.75, you didn't put the parentheses around the 4 pi in the calculator, and the calculator did the 603.2 divided by 4 and then times by pi. So you gotta make sure you input it into the calculator correctly with those parentheses. Next one says that the width of a rectangular storage container is 1.5 times its height. The length is 16 inches and the volume is 2,000 cubic inches. Find the dimensions. So I've got a rectangular storage container. Looks something like this. It says that the width is 1.5 times the height. So I don't, or 1.25 times the height. So I don't know the height, but the width would be 1.25 times that. And it says the length is 16 inches. So our length would be 16, width would be 1.25h, and height would be height. And they tell me that the volume is equal to 2,000. So I'm thinking about formulas for the volume of a cube. And if I don't know that off the top of my head, I can go back to page 7 and find that the volume of a rectangular prism is length times width times height. So let's plug in what we know. 2,000 equals 16 times 1.25h times h. So let's multiply this together. I'm going to end up with 20 h squared. I can get rid of the 20 by dividing by 20, and I'd end up with 100 equals h squared, and algebraically I'd have to get rid of the square by taking the square root. So I'd find that my height would be inches, 10 inches here. Now sometimes when you do this, you think that you're done when you find the height, but what a good math student will do is go back and look at the problem and ask if they've answered all of the portions of the question. And the question doesn't say just to find the height, it says find the dimensions of the container. So I really want to know height, width, and length. We already found the height. I know that the width or the length was 16. They already gave that to me. So to find the width, I would do 1.25 times 10 to get 12.5. should add inches to all of these. So my answers are really 10, 12 and a half, and 16, not just 10. So again, I always recommend that when you're doing a story problem that you go back and you look to see if you answered what the question was asking. Because a lot of times we assume once we solved for a variable, like I did here, I got the h, that I was done. But in this case, it wanted to know all of the dimensions.